Okay, as we get ready to hear from Richard Kaplan, cleared for takeoff. Rich, I know from our conversations, has been deeply involved all week long, gathering up information on the tragedy where 159 people lost their life on the Ethiopian crash, the Boeing 737 MAX 8 and 9. So without further ado, here's our aviation reporter, Rich Kaplan.
Good evening, folks. Before I begin, I personally want to send condolences to the families of the 157 who perished in the Ethiopian crash. I also want to send my condolences out to the victims and the families of the Lion Air crash, all 189. You are in my prayers. This is for you. I dedicate this segment to you. The Boeing 737 MAX 8 is the latest incarnation of the world's most popular jetliner, the Boeing 737. The 737 first flew back in 1968 and was heralded as a technologically advanced twin-engine, short to medium-haul jetliner. It was a superb aircraft, excellent design, and is flown by airlines on all four corners of the globe and in different variants. Our military even uses it. The MAX series made its debut less than 2 years ago and was heralded as a technological marvel in that it encompassed new engine design, a new type of wing, all composite, and most important, it was fly-by-wire technology. The MAX 8 can carry up to 189 to 190 plus passengers and is currently in service with Southwest Airlines and American Airlines. Our neighbors up north, Air Canada and WestJet, also have some in their fleet. Now, what makes these two crashes so high profile is the fact that they were both pretty much identical circumstances. Both aircraft took off and within not even minutes of takeoff encountered problems with their pitch. Pitch being the angle of attack. Angle of attack is basically the angle that the pilot commits to on takeoff. Now, the MCAS system is an acronym for Maneuvering Characteristic Augmentation System. It was designed to correct that very situation. When Boeing designed the Boeing 737 MAX, they changed, as I mentioned, the engine design, pitching the engines at a slightly higher pitch. In so doing, it created an anomaly in the aircraft where pilots were reporting the plane would pitch up on takeoff, sometimes at a higher angle than normal, and therefore needed a system to correct this, hence MCAS. The Maneuvering Characteristic Augmentation System was designed to address and compensate for some unique aircraft handling characteristics and help the pilots to bring the nose down in the event the jet's angle of attack drifted too high when flying manually. This is without autopilot, putting the aircraft at risk of stalling. MCAS was implemented into the plane due to the relocation of the engines and their refined nacelle shape. This caused an upward pitching movement. In essence, the MAX's nose was getting nudged skyward. The Maneuvering Characteristic Augmentation System, or MCAS, was designed to address this according to Boeing engineers and pilots briefed on the system. Now at the center of the inquiry into the crash of Lion Air 610 and the Ethiopian crash, which happened just this Sunday. A brand new Boeing 737 MAX 8. MCAS is activated without pilot input and commands nose-down stabilizers to enhance pitch characteristics during step turns with elevated load factors and during flaps up flight. That is when the pilot retracts the flaps to a smooth condition as we see on this aircraft. At airspeeds approaching stall, its sole function is to trim the stabilizers nose down according to the system's description to pilots who were learning about it for the first time this week. Now, it's very important that we take a very close look at the MCAS system in this diagram that Howie brought for me. If you look at the diagram, I'm going to point out three factors. On the nose of the aircraft are probes. The probes feed the computers on the airplane data constantly. It is this data that the MCAS will feed off of to determine if it needs to pitch the aircraft down or maybe pitch the aircraft up. Level flight, this is the normal angle of attack, AOA, the angle where airflow hits the aircraft during flight. Boeing's AOA sensor winglet aligns itself with the airflow. Nose-up flight, the high AOA puts the aircraft at risk of stalling. The sensor and MCAS automatically activate and move to the horizontal stabilizers counterclockwise to push the nose down. Now I wanted to find, for those who aren't familiar, what a stall actually is. A stall is when the aircraft is at such an angle that air is no longer being sucked into the engines. The engines are starving for that air in order to produce lift. And the plane no longer can maintain lift. The only other option is it plunges to the ground. That is a stall. Now, the problem could arise if the MCAT gets wrong sensor readings and automatically pushes the plane's nose down, overriding the pilot's command. This is what I believe may have happened in those two cases. Faulty data from the sensors. If it is determined that that is the cause, it will ultimately lead to a redesign in the computer software and hierarchy of the system itself. Not a very complicated change, although it sounds like it, but you're dealing with hundreds of thousands to almost millions of individual code inside these computers. That's what computers run on. When we were young, I'm sure many of you have heard of what's known as the binary code, 0101010101. I can go on and on. Basically, that's what I'm talking about. Computer code in which the aircraft systems are interpreting to determine whether or not it needs to be adjusting the pitch and angle of the aircraft. In these two cases, the pitch was so violent after takeoff, 1 minute into the flight, the pilot of the Ethiopian flight radioed that he had an emergency and wished to return to the airport immediately. 6 minutes passed before the plane crashed about 30 miles from that airport of origin, Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. The aircraft was pitching at such a violent rate that the pilots fought valiantly to regain control. Now, you may have been hearing stories that this might be pilot error because they didn't receive necessary training. I don't believe any training could have prepared them for what they were dealing with. I mean that. No training in the world can compensate for an airplane that is malfunctioning. No pilot could, and although pilots are taught situational awareness, it is always difficult when you are faced with such a serious situation as your aircraft pitching up and down after takeoff. The normal takeoff speed for a Boeing 737 MAX 8 is 250 miles an hour. According to data from one of our satellites that recorded the crash, the aircraft was clocked at over 310 miles per hour. Now, the difference may not sound like a lot, but when you consider the factors of acceleration and the rate of aerodynamics, as well as the impact it has on the airplane and the stress that it causes, it is very serious. Because it's causing the airplane to pitch violently up, violently down, violently up, violently down, to the point where it is inevitable there will be a stall and the plane will crash. That's what I believe happened here. To the families, I pray every night that this segment will bring you closure. Although it's just a start, at least you now have information as to what your loved ones experienced. And I pray that that will at least give you some degree of closure. I created this segment to educate the public on an industry that needs to be monitored. We need to always monitor this industry because we put our lives on the line when we board these planes. We have a right to know that they're safe. One question that I want to bring up, and I have two questions of the day that I urge you to answer on our website and also on our YouTube page. I urge you to leave a comment, please. Do you feel, in your own opinion, now hearing what you've heard and reading what you've read in the papers and in the liberal media's outlets, do you believe the 737 MAX is safe? Secondly, and more importantly, do you feel the FAA had a right in waiting to collect more data before grounding this airplane? Do you feel the FAA should have grounded it immediately like the Chinese government did? These are two very important questions that I get asked a lot at work, believe it or not, and I agree they need to be answered. I also want to applaud President Donald Trump. We've never seen a president of the United States personally get involved and order an aircraft to be grounded in the history of aviation. It's always been left to the FAA or the DOT. You have a president who had the peace of mind and state of mind to know something was seriously wrong and that this aircraft could not continue to fly. The Canadian government, hours before the president issued the order, grounded all 737 MAXs from flying in their airspace. I am not saying that he bowed to pressure. I believe he made an educated decision, and in this particular case, I applaud it as the right one. If he is watching this segment, which I hope he does, I'd be honored, I can tell you, you got it right. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, because God only knows how many lives you may have saved in that decision. Because there is a very strong probability that there is a fault in the MCAS system. And if it turns out to be true, which right now it's more and more looking like it is, you made a very bold and very good decision in doing what you did. The flying public has a right to know that the airplanes they fly on are indeed safe. I believe one solution in ensuring this is a passenger's bill of rights. Currently, there is none, meaning that the airlines can pretty much sit on the tarmac for hours on end. They can charge you what they will. If they cancel a flight, they can do what they want. We need accountability. We've always needed accountability, but now more than ever, we need accountability in this industry. We need to protect the flying public. That is the whole purpose of this segment. That is why I do what I do. Because you have a right to know that the airline that you have put your trust in is doing its job right. I do not want to go on record and fault any carriers. I am not here to do that. I'm here as a consumer who uses a product just like everybody else to make sure that that product is what they promise it to be. The 737 MAX was heralded as one of the most technologically advanced airplanes of this era. It is, without question, technologically advanced. But another issue that has been brought up by my colleague in Vineland, New Jersey, A.J. Kashani, who is also an aviation expert, he has brought up a point. Are these planes too sophisticated for the pilots who fly them? I don't believe so. I believe that these pilots know exactly what they're flying. I believe the airlines know exactly what they're purchasing. I believe that you make a commitment to do a job knowing that that job does come with risks. But at the end of the day, you've made that commitment. You fly an airliner, you're an airline pilot. Of course, your product is going to be sophisticated. Of course, the cockpit's going to be advanced. We are in the computer age. Last week I did a report on flying cars. This is real. The technology is real. Computers are real. Should we be computerizing the cockpit to the level that we are? I leave that to you to decide. But I can tell you as a person with experience in this field, I believe that flying is always one of the safest means of transportation. I put my faith in the airlines I fly with, like JetBlue, to get it right, and they have. Sadly, we have 2 incidents where 2 airplanes went down because of a failure involving a system that was heralded as a technological marvel. Technology is not perfect. Before you go home tonight and think about whether or not it's who they're at fault, I'm at fault, he's at fault, she's at fault, think about this for a moment. Aviation is only 100 plus years old. 100 years. In 100 years, we have gone from a plane made out of wood and canvas to airplanes made out of composite materials. We have seen the evolution of jet propulsion. Soon we will see the evolution of ion propulsion. Sci-fi is not so far off. Orville and Wilbur Wright would probably be rolling in their graves if they saw what we've accomplished. The reality is that aviation, like any other science, is not perfect. We learn from the mistakes that we make. My hope and my prayer this evening, and I hope that you are all in agreement with me, is that the investigators take the time they need to get this right. There is no hurry to put this plane back into service if there is a problem. Do not bow to the pressure of the airline industry to get these planes into the air. Human life is the most precious thing in this planet, and we must cherish it. Our own president, who is a billionaire, put people over profit. I ask you to do the same. People over profit. Let's get this right. 350 people lost their lives because of a fault. Let's give them the answers they deserve. Let's get this right and get these planes back in the air safe. And I emphasize that word safe. Safety must be a factor. I push for this Bill of Rights in the hopes to protect you from unsafe practices. And I hope and I pray that tonight you will watch this segment and you will carry from it the knowledge that this is an industry that is still young. It is not a perfect industry by any means, but it is an industry that we all rely on to build a product that gets us from A to B. At the end of the day, the investigation will hopefully reveal what happened, and we will learn from it and build better airplanes in the process. This is not a bad airplane. It is a plane that has a flaw, and it needs to be fixed. That's what it all comes down to. Let's fix it. Thank you.
Okay, Rich, thanks for the great report. And my feeling is Boeing is a great company. They've been around for decades, and they will work weeks and months to make sure that this MCAS situation is fixed, and the pilots can read the sensors before the planes are flying again. So I think it's going to take several months, but hopefully for aviation, through a lot of research and a lot of technology, that they'll get it right, and these planes will be flying within several months. Okay, but great report. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.